Welcome back, gentlefolk and rapscallions of all persuasions, but particularly to the writers out there. Do you want to build a fictional world so real your audience will swear it exists? If you're here on my channel, I'm guessing you are a fantasy fan, and therefore, if you're writing a story, probably a fantasy author. But that doesn't mean you can just stop at the cool magic system you created. Nothing exists in a vacuum, and this is why mundane, bureaucratic things like waste management or intercity travel are important. Knowing where your food supply comes from, what trade routes will be cut off in a war, and even including things like sumptuary laws can elevate your world from good to legendary. The foundation beneath the fantasy. In a couple of my cosplay videos, I talk about how the foundations you wear under a costume affect everything else on top of it, and it's the same with world building. If you've ever played any map dominance board game like Catan, Civilization, or Scythe, you know that you have to balance your resource gathering, technological advancement, trade, and conflicts, and that each of the factions has their own strengths and weaknesses. This is the kind of world building your readers come to your story for. Epic wars between kingdoms, tragic famines that cause your hero's family to give him up so he has a chance to live, but there is a goldmine of deeper conflict if you're willing to go there. We're here unveiling the invisible work that keeps a civilization running, how logistical systems like food supply chains and communication networks underpin epic narratives. Let's take a look at Brent Weeks' Lightbringer series, where he does a fantastic job setting up the main protagonist's homeland as the former center of fruit and vegetable productions, with their oranges being sought after by the whole world. But the current system of government is intermittently strangling trade, and that means that only the richest nobles can afford to buy these oranges that are a pale imitation of what they used to be, because now they have to be picked so early and so underripe, and yet they still sometimes rot before reaching their destinations. If you have epic conflicts but you don't show the effects of that on everyday life, it lowers the stakes and makes the story weaker. You wouldn't tell a story about the owner of a crafting small business trying to sell their wares on Etsy set in any year since, 2018, without mentioning the global economy. So why not include in your epic fantasy a conflict over where the raw materials for magic come from? Beyond the map, resource management and trade. One of the core conflicts of Brandon Sanderson's Mistborn trilogy is that a major character survived a slave camp, which is close to a death sentence and the last resort for traders. It also happens to be the only place in the world where a very specific resource crucial to the noble economy and the heights of magical power can be obtained. Sanderson plays a lot with the idea of money is power. In some of his worlds, the money is, quite literally, the power at play, whether that is a convenient metal anchor to push off of or the magical glowing smoke trapped inside the monetary pieces. Tap into the economic engine of your story. A major part of Mistborn Era 2, the Wax and Wane series, is that all of the railroads run through the capital city and goods are taxed as they leave, meaning that the outlying settlements can't ship to each other without incurring the taxes for shipping through the Ellendale Basin, and this provides a backdrop of social unrest that everyone is focused on instead of the larger threat. Another example of economy at play is in the Kingkiller Chronicle. I affectionately refer to Name of the Wind as Harry Potter and the Struggle of Student Loans because I have never, ever had a more immersive understanding of the relative cost of items and currency exchange rates than I do in this series. And it's all built from the point of view of a starveling urchin just trying to survive and then pay his university tuition through various side hustles, including but not limited to playing an instrument for donations, visiting a loan shark with a ruinous interest rate, and performing menial work for the school in exchange for a small compensation. Remember the core of world building, though. Nothing exists in a vacuum. Who stands to benefit from the existing economy? Who could overturn it with new ideas or processes? How has the status quo been maintained, and is your story about upsetting it or working within the bounds of it? I feel like I have to include an important disclaimer here that this is not an excuse to get stuck in world-building purgatory and never get around to writing your book. Actually, do you want to see mine? Look at that. Look at how thick that is. Okay? Okay. Yeah. I started this in 2017. I built a language. I built a whole language. I built a language with vocabulary, verb conjugations, a script, and I didn't just build one language. Oh, no, no, no. I built the language for their counterparts in the mirror world as well. So if one singular person wants to come at me for the comment that I made in my Arcana Academy review video, where I said that I had been working on a book with a similar premise for 8 years, here's my proof. All that to say this: carefully consider the story you want to tell and build the basic infrastructure of society, but only deep dive up front into what will be relevant to you, and if other things become relevant later, explore them then. Harry Potter is the story of a chosen one, his academic struggles balanced against his role in the fate of the world, and the power of love. There's a whole economic system getting Ollivander his wandwoods and cores, but that's not the story we read about. Societal infrastructure, more than just buildings. There's a bit in the Stormlight Archive where one of the characters says of another, he'd never known anyone to get as excited by sewage. And this is how you know that these things were considered in the world-building process. Things like sanitation, public safety, and healthcare access are vital parts of how a society functions. Or doesn't. Proper disposal of waste feeds into the healthcare aspect because disease doesn't spread as quickly. If you have part of the magic system that is focused on healing, how is that accessed by the general public? How are your laws enforced? Who does the enforcing, and how are they tied to the government whose laws they are enforcing? Is it a religious duty, or is it merely a transactional monetary exchange? Someone just doing their job? How do their personal morals conflict with what they have to do on a day-to-day basis? Louder for the people in the back, nothing exists in a vacuum. Culturally, infrastructure has a more far-reaching impact than you might think. Compare the number of widely available public transportation systems in America versus other parts of the world. American infrastructure is heavily designed around the utility of the automobile and the individual freedom of getting in your car and going wherever you want, whenever you want. You have to scale this for the transportation options available to your characters, how far they are from a major population center, and how that plays into the wider tapestry of characters, technologies, magics, and motivations. If you want to have teleportation, by all means, go for it, but then the pace of your world has to match it. There's a magical tech support story waiting to be written because the nobility's magic communication mirrors and runic transportation circles keep breaking down. And to loop back to civilization and logistics, the speed of your communication is directly proportional to how centralized your government can be. In 2025, you can be in instantaneous contact with almost everyone in the world at any given time. If you're waiting weeks for a courier on a pony to deliver handwritten reports and you're hoping he doesn't die of dysentery on the way, then you need to have vassals you trust on the edges of your empire to do a lot of enforcement for you and only tell you the really big stuff. The immersive payoff. Why logistics matter. It's old hat at this point to poke fun at Game of Thrones Season 8, but do you remember how the world had a sense of scale in the early seasons, and then by the end you have Dany hopping back and forth between Dragonstone and the Wall every couple episodes when that is fully at least a month-long journey, probably more? I get that she has a dragon, but do you really think that Daenerys Stormborn of the House Targaryen, first of her name, Queen of the Andals and the First Men, Protector of the Seven Kingdoms, the Mother of Dragons, the Khaleesi of the Great Grass Sea, the Unburnt, the Breaker of Chains, is going to sit on the back of a dragon exposed to the elements for however long that's going to take? Once you pick one of these conflicts and one of these points along the scale of advancement, be consistent with it, and make sure that the changes are realistic if you have people inventing, discovering, or rediscovering things. The pace of society is not going to pick up overnight if teleportation suddenly exists. First, it will be limited to the wealthy. You can have secret assassinations because people won't be expecting that a neighboring nation could have attacked in that spot. You can have politicians comfortably living in countryside mansions and reporting to the capital for daily hobnobbing and voting. You are not going to have mine workers living in the city and stepping on a plate at the end of their block to transport them to where the mining is happening a few weeks after this is invented. So tell me if you want to see more content like this where I dive into the nuts and bolts of writing and why I love certain books as much as I do from a narrative perspective. Do all those delicious things that feed the almighty algorithm, like, share, and subscribe, and I'll see you next time. Bye!